My name is Prometheus, and I'm a poet and founder of the Others Collective, and this piece is in support of social enterprise RDXL House. This is a poem titled On the Record. The state stores its scholars with unread books, its dead poets, corpses of civilization, body and soul behind a vinyl door. Audre Lorde saw it for a second at Hunter. Huey Newton in the Merritt College dorm room. The young lords found it in a sealed corridor in CCNY. Malcolm peeked through from the Autobahn stage. Students from Kent State and Soweto know that door too well. But most go from K to PhD without learning how to knock. They surrender to a silence archive, a padlocked library, china cabinet penitentiaries storing burnt books, learned bones, and letters from WEB to ABB, the PFLP, and the MK. That door becomes a mecca for the wretched of the earth. Some clash with policemen protecting it for profit. Others perform a sit-in to devise how to get in. Others kick, scratch, and cover the door in distended marks. Ronin students press ears against the wall and hear the mantras of their mentors, their cries and their calls. They hear Lumumba, Monk, and Max Roach breaking splintered drumsticks, beating the buckling door. Inside, Abby Lincoln asks John Locke and Elaine Locke if the jazz keys will loosen the hellish gates. Langston and Louise Patterson pass a note underneath, quote, "If we can free Huey, free Angela, free Mandela, free speech, free Bobby, free Gaza, free Jazz, and free the slaves, what price we gotta pay to liberate education? Why is there a fine when we make it?" Franz Fanon slips a note underneath saying, "Just take it." Knock, knock, Mr. Mayor. Open up the door or we will knock yours down. Take your locks off illiteracy. Give us the key or we will take it. Knock, knock. Miss Governor, unchain our education. If you profit from pedagogy, you become public enemy number one. If you exploit enlightenment as you've already done, you are a capital criminal. You hoard know-how. You are a capital criminal. You hoard know-how behind closed doors. Open it or step out of the way. For when it swings open, when inheritance hemorrhage out, after the funeral processions and rites of passage for Renaissance erased from recency, we remember the rebellion raised from our memory until we recover, until we rework the vinyl barrier to art and education into a revolving door, a spinning record. Free CUNY is the one solution. Else be recorded as the woman who tried to silence our revolution.
So I think we were just getting into you talking about the concept of like the undesirables that like brought already.
No, Hunter.
Okay, yes, we were talking about Hunter, but I was interested in you bringing back into just like because I said was that on the right track? Like, how does that connect? Obviously, like you saying it, like I understand it, but to the people at home that like don't connect the pieces, how did Ronald Reagan fuck up education?
Sure. So back in about the 60s, there was a time, I can't say the date, there was a time when CUNY was free to everybody, but when people of color, Black and Latino people started attending Hunter and CUNYs, then... There we go.
Can you go back to the part where you said when...
Black and Latino people.
I'm not considered crime.
No, you're fine. Sorry, guys. Wait, give me just 1 second. So sorry.
You know.
This is David, by the way.
You know,
this is David's apartment. David is a musical theater writer and playwright. Just came back from Portugal like a week ago because he had some of his work shows international.
But
graduated from University
people of color started coming to college.
Michigan State.
That's when it
for
became a problem.
no, you're fine. Combines science
That
and
probably is better.
physics and
Because then
musical
nobody
theater
can
all
pop
together.
you.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, look into it.
That's
Yeah.
Impressive.
Right.
he's incredible, and also is the owner of all 3 cameras.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
He's like a little production company himself, okay?
Yeah.
This is David's apartment.
Lovely spot. I
And
love
the
the
brick walls
map.
also David's.
I'm so sorry there have been so many interruptions, guys.
And that yippee ass dog.
So sorry.
No, it's okay.
Love you
Girl,
both.
can
Thank
do
you
it
for
without.
vibing.
Yeah.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Please quiet on set.
Do you want me to ask a question again?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we were just talking about, sorry, I'm trying to think just about, like, the connection with what Ronald Reagan did, and I was asking if you could, like, just be more specific, just for the people at home that were, like, giving them enough information for them to, like, go do a Google search if they don't know.
So, that kind of Google search would involve looking at how CUNY, before a certain time, was free to people. And once people of color started attending CUNYs, like Hunter and City and etc., there became a price to it. And looking at Ronald Reagan, looking at his attacks on education, you can also look at the likes of Angela Davis and him as governor of California being so upset that a communist was teaching at the University of California, which really is one of the starts to her story, so one of the starts to a chapter of her story.
Right, yeah. And so I'm wondering, with that acknowledgement, because I know that that's something that, like, was a known thing for a lot of colleges. It wasn't even just CUNYs, it was like public universities all over, even in Georgia at some time in the 60s, that stuff started changing, 60s or 70s. And I'm interested to know, what are your thoughts on community and when trying to get these big changes, because it's definitely a big change, and I think a lot of people, when they hear it, if they don't have a radical pathology of a mind, they kind of think, okay, well, like, that's not possible. But I believe that it is when you build community. And so do you kind of agree, and where do you feel like community's place is in, like, fighting for big changes like that?
Sure. So when looking at changes like, something like Free CUNY, and looking at public schools and Black community particularly, you have to remember that public schools in the South only exist because of Black people. And that's a large statement, but to consider something small ran, but after slavery ended and Black people were almost totally uneducated, the masses, within the first few decades of Reconstructions, Black people really grasped onto education, and they used their little leverage that they had from the government seats that they've got to fight for the public school, right? Even though legislatures were vehemently against public schools, right? Whether it was for Black people or white people, in the same way that Ronald Reagan and other legislators now are against public schooling, right? Because public schooling is great for the masses, right? It's great for the proletariat, it's great for the Lutheran proletariat, it's great for everybody in that way. And talk about community. Another thing public school is great for, besides educating the masses, is it allows a place to form a community outside of financial expectation. Well, we may go to school because we can get money. That's one soulless reason to go to school. But we also go to school for that quest for knowledge. And while there, we find other people whose auntie sent them to school to get that knowledge, and we grow those bonds. Right? That is one of the greatest. That is one of the greatest benefits of a public school. Knowledge is extraordinarily great. The financial benefit is useful, but that growth of community is first and foremost.
I think that's awesome. And so when you think about community, do you find it important for marginalized communities to essentially not just have a space of want, but have a space of need in the scope or the landscape of the media industry? So in terms of, like, creating stories for themselves, in terms of, like, we were talking about a little bit earlier, like, the news and the ways in which, like, marginalized people will be depicted in the news and issues will be depicted, because you really don't have the same people that are being affected by the issues that we discuss on the news actually behind the scenes, like as journalists or in writers' rooms, in the same proportional ways. So where do you see that connection of importance, and are you a person that is kind of championing for us as marginalized communities, but also as a species of various different communities, to support those spaces of a space of media that is for marginalized communities by marginalized communities, but also even operates like not just for profit, operates for other things as well.
I'm glad you used the word species. And this is another quote that the viewers will have to look up, right? I'm not going to say who said it. But someone said that the lions will have to get historians, or else the hunters, the lions will have to get historians, or else the history of the hunt will be told by the hunters. You know, so that is to say, when someone like W.E.B. Du Bois comes along and looks at the whole history of the Reconstruction era and slavery and says, white historians, you're not doing history, this isn't history, this is propaganda, right? And completely shifts the landscape of how we are interrogating history, right? When somewhere, and my research is primarily in the Harlem Renaissance, and looking at specifically the 135th Street Library in Harlem. But when someplace like that library, called the Schomburg Center now, comes along and provides a space for black scholars to sit down and look at history, provides space for black performers to perform in their theater, right? Now we have this alternative space, right? Separated from that status, that white status quo that provides you this one idea. Whether that one idea is that black people are inferior, or it's that one idea that profit makes you superior in that kind of way. The library, or this alternative place, regardless of what we're looking at, provides a different way of thinking, right? A different way to go about living. And that kind of multiplicity, it captures that multiplicity, right? And, you know, with blackness cannot be defined as a singular thing.
Yeah.
Blackness is like a braided hair, right? There are so many strands, right? There are so many black people which I necessarily disagree with, right? Because we have our own intellectual traditions, right? I belong to a black radical tradition, right? Which is just a strand of so many other traditions. But the goal there is to recognize how we, you know, flow together, or we're braided together, and recognize what that, you know, and the goal is to recognize how we're braided together and recognize what the importance is of being, you know, linear or next to each other is. I also forgot the question, but...
It's okay. Sorry, the buzzer got you, so we blame it on the buzzer.
Yeah.
But no, I do feel like you answered it though, especially when you were saying your piece about, for one, the idea of the library showing you a different way of living life is so beautiful. It's so beautiful, and then explaining the black community as a braided piece of hair, all the different strands that have been growing for different amount of times. Maybe some are short, maybe some are longer, maybe some are thicker, some are stronger, some are weaker. It's such an interesting idea. And I guess one of my concluding questions is, why do you think it's important for you, but also for other communities that you maybe, you know, reside in, but other communities that you also, like you talked about, live alongside with, you maybe aren't existing in that community, but you're advocating for them. You are, you know, hoping the best for them, especially in us as marginalized people, with a social enterprise like RDX House, who we predominantly focus on like platforming BIPOC people, queer people, in the media, whether that's journalism, writing, etc. Why do you think it's important to you and to other communities to not just donate if they can, what they can, but also like to come and live in community with us, to come, you know, maybe work on one of our projects, come see our stuff, come experience another perspective?
I'm going to answer this from the perspective of a founder of the Others Collective and somewhat of a kind of minister of information for the Others Collective, right? So,
and if you do, I would love for you to also tell, you know, everybody at home, what is the Others Collective, just because I know, but they don't.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the Others Collective is a collective, oh, I thought you were waving, I'm sorry.
No, I was just like fist bump.
So the Others Collective is a artist collective based in the Bronx, which one is dedicated to those people of the world who may have been considered other basically racially othered, possibly. No. Other as in maybe racially othered, sexually othered, gendered differently, but also other as, pushed away from family, pushed away from where you live, forced to immigrate, forced to emigrate. Othered as in the wretched of the earth, as Franz Fanon called it. Othered as in the damned. Othered as in the misunderstood, right? So those who are feeling as if they belong in no place at all, right? And the Others Collective see those people as having the most radical potential to really influence a social reorientation, a revolution in this landscape. So to speak from the perspective of the Others Collective, I want to answer that question. What was the question?
The question was essentially shortening it. Why do you think people should support a space like the social enterprise of RDXL?
Sure. So money and capital cannot exist with a healthy media ecosystem, right? And RDXL House, right, provides the opportunity for people who also may be considered other to produce their art or produce their information in a way which is true to themselves regardless of the influence of capital, right? And that is a resource, that people are severely lacking. Because when we're looking on television, with their commercials and their advertisements, we do not know who the sponsors are. We may, because we may watch commercials. But in a similar way, when we're looking at the board of trustees for our schools or Congress, we're not really looking at their super PACs that are funding them, right? Something much smaller, like the others, like
RDXL House.
Like something much smaller, like the others, or
RDXL.
Got it.
Right. It's okay. It's a mouthful.
No, it's
guys.
It is a mouthful, so don't worry.
Right.
Well, something much smaller like the others, like RDXL House, allows people to know exactly who they're dealing with. We have the opportunity to, rather than orient ourselves from the check that we're getting, orient ourselves to producing the best and most true form of what we want to say, regardless of what that is. And that is something that's severely lacking, and that we severely need.
Yeah. A word. I've been saying earlier that I've been at church on it, listening to all these different perspectives, and I definitely feel like this was another sermon. I appreciate it. And I think that the last thing I have to say to it is, you know what, I love that we are able to create these spaces where we build our own tables, because a lot of people feel like, well, I won't be able to get the resources, I won't be able to do this, do that, but when you build your own table, other people are going to want to come and sit at that table. And capitalists, if anything they realize about capitalists, is they will follow the money. Yeah. They don't give two hex if it goes against their politicals, if they know that, oh, well, this is going to give poor people, marginalized people some more voices. Do they think that there's money in it? Do they think that people have an interest in it? And then you manipulate them for their money.
Sure.
And that's just facts. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry for your capitalists.
So add one little thing. Also, on the topic of building our own tables, also adding the idea of possibly not building a table at all. Possibly building something that does not resemble a wooden structure where people sit around whatsoever. Right. So consider, what are we building, and with whose tools, shout out to Audrey Lord, with whose tools are we building it? And through that we may truly build something that has not been seen, and something that could really solve the problems which capitalism and patriarchy and the imperialist white supremacist capitalist patriarchy in general is posing to us.
Right, so what would you build? What would you propose?
It doesn't really matter what I propose, it matters what the others propose, what everyone who's not in this room proposed, and that is the masses. That is those braids, those individual braids, how we come together, how this collaboration together, we come together and experiment and fail and mess up and try again. Samuel Beckett said, try again, fail better, right? We experiment. Something that capitalism has taught us is we do what works with what makes money, and even if it doesn't work, we keep going because it's profitable. We will fail. It's necessary to fail and recognize how we fail and learn from it, and figure out what we're going to build. Because we have a lot of things right now that are obsolete. our black celebrities are quite obsolete right now. Our black artists, unfortunately, a lot of our friends on the left have become obsolete. But we have to recognize what is failing. We have to recognize why others see us as not working. We have to recognize why someone like Zora Neale Hurston, the foremost black folklorist, would say the black people will never grasp communism. And we have to say, I love Zora Neale Hurston with my whole heart, and I am a communist. And I have to say, well, Zora, well, Miss Hurston, why do you think that? And recognize that she's not saying that because she's counter-revolutionary, but she's saying that because we have flaws. And we recognize our flaws, we deal with them, we build something that addresses those reasons. We just have to start building.
I love that. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for your word, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Of course.